For decades, McQueen was seen as the ultimate cool guy on screen. Calm, confident, and in control. But behind the camera, it was a very different story. Co-stars clashed with him, directors struggled to handle him, and even after his death, the drama didn't stop. So why did so many people, some of the biggest names in Hollywood, truly hate Steve McQueen? Join us as we break down the feuds, the fights, and the man who made enemies just as easily as he made hits. The making of a rebel. Steve McQueen's life didn't begin with Hollywood lights. It began with chaos, abandonment, and deep emotional wounds that would follow him throughout his life. Born on March 24, 1930 in Beech Grove, Indiana, Terrence Stephen McQueen came into the world already at a disadvantage. His father, a stunt pilot, left before Steve was even a year old. His mother, Julian, struggled with alcoholism and wasn't able to take care of him properly. She would disappear for long stretches, leaving Steve with relatives who did their best but couldn't give him the stable home he needed. As a child, McQueen was often left to fend for himself. He was sent to live with his grandparents on a farm in Missouri, where he found some peace for a short time. But when he was around 8 years old, his mother took him back. By then, she had remarried, and Steve's new stepfather was abusive. The young boy was beaten and treated harshly, and the little bit of security he had on the farm was gone. He began skipping school, running with the wrong crowd, and getting into trouble. McQueen's behavior only got worse as he grew older. He was constantly in and out of trouble with the law. By the time he was a teenager, he had been arrested multiple times for petty theft and fighting. Eventually, his mother couldn't handle him anymore and sent him to the California Junior Boys Republic, a reform school in Chino. This place was tough, with strict rules and hard routines. But strangely, it was here that Steve began to change. The school gave him structure. It gave him a chance to work with his hands and be physically active, which he liked. While he didn't become a model student, he showed small signs of improvement. Later in life, McQueen would donate money and visit the school regularly. He never forgot what it did for him. After leaving the reform school, McQueen drifted for a while. He worked various low-paying jobs and lived on the edge of society. Then, at age 17, he joined the United States Marine Corps. This was a big turning point. The military offered discipline, order, and the chance to prove himself. But Steve didn't change overnight. In fact, he rebelled almost immediately. He disobeyed orders, got into fights, and even spent 41 days in military jail for going AWOL, leaving his post without permission. Despite his bad behavior, McQueen also showed signs of leadership and bravery. At one point, he helped rescue fellow Marines during an Arctic training mission. He pulled several men out of a tank that had fallen into the water, and he was later honored for it. This event stood out in his record and showed that beneath his tough shell, McQueen had courage and loyalty when it counted. The Marines didn't break him. If anything, they shaped him. They taught him how to handle pressure and work as part of a team, skills he would use later in his acting career. Still, Steve remained fiercely independent. He didn't like being told what to do. He trusted very few people. This attitude became part of his image as an actor. The lone wolf, the outsider, the man who walked his own path. All of these early experiences helped form Steve McQueen's personality. Growing up without love or safety made him defensive. He learned to rely only on himself. Being mistreated made him hard and suspicious. His time in the reform school and the Marines gave him the discipline to survive and succeed. But they didn't take away his stubbornness. Instead, they sharpened it. Up next, you'll see how that tough start helped launch him into fame and into the center of some very serious drama. Talent, ego, and the star machine. Steve McQueen didn't just become famous overnight. His rise to stardom was a steady climb, marked by determination, talent, and a strong need to be in control. From the beginning, it was clear that he was different from most actors in Hollywood. He had a quiet but powerful screen presence. He didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. He didn't smile often, but when he did, it meant something. He didn't act like a typical leading man, and that made him stand out. His first real break came with the TV show Wanted, Dead or Alive, which aired from 1958 to 1961. McQueen played bounty hunter Josh Randall, a tough, quiet man who carried a special kind of rifle. The show was a hit. Viewers loved the way McQueen played the role. Calm, serious, and full of mystery. He made every movement count. Even small gestures, like how he lit a cigarette or looked at someone, had meaning. He didn't have to say much to make an impact. That style would become his signature. While the show made him well known, McQueen wanted more than TV success. He wanted to be a movie star. Around the same time, he took a leading role in a low-budget horror film called The Blob. The film was about a strange, jelly-like creature from space that eats everything in its path. It sounds silly now, but at the time, it was a big success at the box office, especially among younger audiences. McQueen didn't love the film, but it helped push him further into the public eye. Then came The Magnificent Seven in 1960, the movie that truly launched his film career. It was a Western about a group of gunfighters hired to protect a poor village from bandits. McQueen played Vin, one of the seven, and even though it wasn't the lead role, he managed to steal scenes every time he was on screen. He used little tricks, like adjusting his hat, checking his gun, or moving in the background to make sure the camera caught him. This caused tension on set, especially with the film's star, Yul Brynner. But it also showed how driven McQueen was to get noticed. He didn't want to be just another actor in a group. He wanted to stand out, and he did. McQueen's style wasn't just natural talent. He studied hard to become better. He trained at the famous Actors Studio in New York, where he learned method acting. This style of acting teaches actors to use their own feelings and memories to make their performances more real. McQueen took it seriously. He would rehearse again and again to get things exactly the way he wanted. He was very focused, but he was also hard to work with. He didn't like being told what to do, even by directors. If he thought something didn't feel right, he would push back. He believed that no one understood his character better than he did. Next, you'll see how these traits led to one of his most talked about feuds with his own neighbor, James Garner. The feud with James Garner. Steve McQueen and James Garner were two of the biggest stars in Hollywood during the 1960s and 1970s. They both had good looks, charm, and strong screen presence. They even worked together in The Great Escape, one of the most famous war movies of that era. But off-screen, their relationship was far from friendly. In fact, they didn't get along at all. Even though they lived next door to each other in Brentwood, California, their feud was well known in Hollywood circles. And over time, it only got worse. It all started when McQueen moved into the upscale Brentwood neighborhood where Garner already lived. The two actors were at very different places in their lives, even though they were both famous. Garner, who starred in the hit TV series Maverick, and later in films like the Americanization of Emily and Grand Prix, was known for his calm, laid-back personality. He was often described as kind, funny, and professional, someone who didn't take himself too seriously. McQueen, on the other hand, had a much tougher edge. He was intense, private, and didn't trust people easily. Garner tried to be friendly when McQueen moved in, but right away there were signs of trouble. McQueen wasn't interested in being neighbors in the traditional sense. He kept to himself, and when he did interact with Garner, it often ended in tension. There were stories that McQueen would rev his motorcycle loudly at odd hours or drive too fast near Garner's home. Some believed he did it on purpose to get attention or to bother his neighbor. As their careers continued, the rivalry became more obvious. McQueen always felt like he had to prove himself. Even though he was a major star, he couldn't help but compare himself to others, especially someone like James Garner, who seemed to succeed with ease. Garner's relaxed charm made everything look effortless. McQueen, in contrast, worked hard for every bit of fame he got. He often felt like he wasn't taken seriously enough. That insecurity showed up in his behavior. People who knew both men noticed the difference in their personalities. Garner didn't like drama or ego games. McQueen seemed to thrive on them. In his memoir, The Garner Files, James Garner didn't hold back when talking about McQueen. He called him an insecure little bastard and explained that McQueen was jealous and always trying to compete. Garner didn't see himself as McQueen's rival, but it was clear that McQueen saw it that way. One of the clearest signs of this tension came during the filming of The Great Escape. Although they were part of the same ensemble cast, the atmosphere on set wasn't always friendly. McQueen felt that his role wasn't big enough, and he threatened to quit the film unless his scenes were changed to make him stand out more. He eventually got what he wanted, including that famous motorcycle escape scene, which became one of the most iconic moments in movie history, but it left a bitter taste with some of the cast, including Garner. Off-screen, the competition didn't stop. There were rumors that McQueen would try to copy Garner's style or buy more expensive versions of whatever car or item Garner had. If Garner bought a new sports car, McQueen would get a flashier one. If Garner made a smart career move, McQueen would try to one-up it. To people around them, it looked like McQueen was always trying to stay ahead of someone he saw as a threat, even if that person didn't feel the same way. Garner, for his part, didn't seem too bothered by McQueen's antics, at least not publicly. But in his book, and in later interviews, he made it clear that he didn't have a high opinion of McQueen's character. He said McQueen was often rude, cold, and difficult to work with. Garner also pointed out that McQueen's need to be the best often made him act like a child. While Garner was the kind of person who believed in teamwork and friendship, McQueen was always watching his back, afraid someone might take his spot. Their feud didn't end with time. They never became close. Even years later, Garner didn't change his view. He respected McQueen's acting talent, but not his attitude. For fans of both men, it was a strange situation. Two stars, living side by side, working in the same industry, yet completely at odds in personality and values. Next, you'll see how this same insecurity turned into a much bigger battle when McQueen went head-to-head with Paul Newman over something Hollywood takes very seriously: top billing. The rivalry with Paul Newman. Steve McQueen's rivalry with Paul Newman was one of the most famous and tense relationships in Hollywood history. Both men were at the top of their careers. Both were known for their good looks, talent, and box office power. But while Newman was seen as friendly and approachable, McQueen had a colder, more distant attitude. Their differences went beyond personality. They clashed over fame, recognition, and especially over who got top billing. Their battle came to a head during the making of The Towering Inferno in 1974. The Towering Inferno was a big-budget disaster movie. It told the story of a fire that breaks out in the world's tallest building and the efforts to save the people trapped inside. The studio knew it needed star power to make the film a hit, so they cast Paul Newman and Steve McQueen together, expecting their combined names to draw in huge audiences. What the studio didn't expect was how difficult it would be to manage the two stars' egos. From the very beginning, there were problems. The biggest issue was billing. Whose name would come first on the poster, in the opening credits, and in marketing? McQueen was deeply sensitive about this. He believed he had worked hard to earn top billing. He didn't want to be seen as second to Newman in any way. Newman, on the other hand, was already one of Hollywood's most beloved actors. He didn't seem to care as much about the billing issue, at least not publicly, but his calm attitude only made McQueen more anxious. After long negotiations, the studio came up with a solution. Instead of placing one name above the other, they used a unique layout. Newman's name would appear on the left side of the poster, and McQueen's name would be on the right, but slightly higher. This way, both actors could claim they had top billing. It was an unusual fix, but it showed how serious the conflict was. Neither man wanted to appear beneath the other. But the tension didn't stop there. McQueen carefully counted how many lines of dialogue he had, compared to Newman. He even demanded that his character be given more to say, so that it would match or exceed Newman's total lines. He also insisted that his character have more action scenes and that he save more people during the film's climax. McQueen wanted to make sure he looked like the bigger hero on screen. The two actors didn't argue openly on set, but the mood was icy. They kept their distance from each other, and everyone around them could feel the tension. Director John Guillermin and producer Irwin Allen had to walk a fine line to keep the film moving forward. Each time one actor was given something, the other wanted the same or more. It became a constant balancing act. Behind all this was McQueen's deep insecurity. He had grown up with very little and had spent his whole life fighting for recognition. Fame didn't ease that feeling. In fact, it made him more suspicious. He was always watching to make sure he wasn't being taken advantage of or left behind. Newman, on the other hand, came from a more stable background and had a confident, relaxed approach to fame. He didn't seem to need to prove himself, which made McQueen uneasy. What made the rivalry even more interesting was the difference in how the public viewed them. Paul Newman was known not just for his acting, but also for his charity work. He started Newman's Own, a food company that gave all profits to charity. He raised millions of dollars for sick children and other causes. People admired him for using his fame to help others. Steve McQueen didn't have that kind of image. He was seen as cool and mysterious, but also distant and selfish. He didn't trust people, and he kept his private life guarded. That contrast added another layer to their rivalry. Newman's popularity seemed effortless. He didn't chase attention, it came to him. McQueen, despite his fame, never felt secure. He was always working to protect his status. The more successful Newman became, the more it seemed to bother McQueen. Next up is the story of how McQueen went from sharing the screen to stealing the spotlight, especially when he faced off with another strong personality, Yul Brynner. The alpha male showdown. Steve McQueen's feud with Yul Brynner on the set of The Magnificent Seven is one of the most famous behind-the-scenes battles in Hollywood history. It was more than just a disagreement between two actors. It was a full-blown power struggle between two very different men, both of whom wanted to be in control. This conflict became a defining moment in McQueen's early career and showed the world just how far he would go to stand out, even if it meant going up against a major star like Brynner. When The Magnificent Seven started filming in 1960, Yul Brynner was the biggest name in the cast. He had already won an Academy Award for The King and I and had a commanding presence on screen. He was known for his shaved head, strong posture, and serious attitude. Brynner expected to be the clear star of the film. McQueen, on the other hand, was still early in his film career. He had some TV fame from Wanted, Dead or Alive, and had starred in a few movies like The Blob, but he wasn't yet a household name. The Magnificent Seven was supposed to be an ensemble film, with all 7 gunmen sharing the spotlight. But McQueen had other plans. He saw this movie as his big chance, and he was determined to make the most of it, even if it meant stealing scenes from his co-stars, especially Brynner. From the start, McQueen used small tricks to draw attention to himself. During scenes where Brynner was speaking or standing in the center, McQueen would move around in the background. He would adjust his hat, check the bullets in his gun, or play with his belt. These gestures weren't in the script, but they pulled the audience's eyes away from Brenner and toward McQueen. He didn't have to say a word. He just made sure people were watching him. McQueen also understood how film worked. He knew the camera could only focus on so much at one time. If he made the right movement at the right moment, it would be impossible for viewers to ignore him. While Brenner stood tall and serious, McQueen made his character look more relaxed, more interesting, and more relatable. It gave him an edge, and Brenner noticed. At first, Brenner tried to stay professional, but as filming went on, he became frustrated. He was supposed to be the lead, but McQueen's constant scene stealing was making headlines even before the movie was released. Brenner reportedly confronted McQueen several times, asking him to stop the distractions. McQueen didn't listen. He believed he had every right to stand out. He wasn't going to step back for anyone, not even a well-known star like Yul Brynner. Things got even more tense when Brenner realized McQueen had more fan buzz than he did. Reporters began writing about the new star in the movie. Even though Brenner had more screen time, McQueen was becoming the one people remembered. This shift in attention was hard for Brenner to accept. There's a well-known story from the set that shows how bad the feud got. Brenner had a special habit of standing on small platforms called apple boxes to appear taller in scenes. McQueen, who was a few inches shorter than Brenner, didn't care about the height difference, but he did care about control. He reportedly kicked away or moved Brenner's apple boxes whenever he could, just to throw him off. It became a battle of pride. Despite all the tension, the film was a success. The Magnificent Seven became a classic, and McQueen's performance stood out as one of the highlights. Critics and audiences loved his cool, calm style. He didn't say much, but he said everything with his body language. Brenner was still respected, but McQueen walked away with more momentum. He had used the film to launch himself to the next level, just like he planned. The conflict between McQueen and Brenner became a Hollywood legend. Directors, producers, and other actors talked about it for years. It showed just how determined McQueen was to get ahead. He didn't mind upsetting people. He didn't care about rules or traditions. If someone else was the star, he would find a way to steal the spotlight. This behavior wasn't just limited to Brenner. It would show up again and again in McQueen's career, with James Garner, Paul Newman, and others. Brenner, for his part, never forgave McQueen. He later called him difficult and unprofessional. But McQueen didn't regret what he did. In his mind, he had earned his place, and no one was going to take it from him. The feud with Brenner was the first major sign of a pattern that would follow McQueen for the rest of his life. He was always ready to fight for attention, and he didn't care if it made enemies. Next, we'll look beyond the screen and see how McQueen's battles didn't end with other actors. They followed him into death, through bitter estate lawsuits and family fights. Lawsuits after death. Steve McQueen died on November 7, 1980 at just 50 years old. He had been diagnosed with mesothelioma, a rare and aggressive cancer most commonly caused by asbestos exposure. Known for his need to be in control of everything, from his films to his personal life, McQueen chose an unusual path in trying to fight the disease. Instead of relying only on traditional American cancer treatments, he traveled to Mexico to receive alternative therapies. These included latrial, coffee enemas, and vitamin injections at a clinic in Ciudad Juarez. Sadly, nothing worked. McQueen passed away in a hospital in Mexico after surgery to remove tumors. His sudden death left a lot of unfinished business behind, especially when it came to his estate. At the time of his passing, Steve McQueen was still a major celebrity and cultural icon, but his financial affairs were complicated. He had been through 2 divorces and had children from his first marriage. He also had many business relationships involving cars, motorcycles, and personal memorabilia. When he died, those things didn't just disappear. They became part of a long and messy fight over what belonged to whom and who had the right to profit from McQueen's name, image, and legacy. The legal disputes started quickly. McQueen's estate included homes, vehicles, watches, clothing, and royalties from his past films and television shows. Questions were raised about how those assets should be divided, not just among his children and last wife, but also among managers, former partners, and companies that had done business with him. The estate had to deal with debts and taxes as well, which added more layers of complexity. But perhaps the most heated issues weren't about the money McQueen made while alive. They were about how his image was used after he died. As the years went on, McQueen's likeness began showing up in advertisements and branding. In 2005, Ford used footage of McQueen in a commercial for the Mustang, editing together scenes from Bullitt to make it look like he was driving the new model. Around the same time, luxury sunglasses company Persol, which McQueen famously wore, began using his image in their marketing. Tag Heuer, the Swiss watchmaker, also linked itself to McQueen by promoting watches he wore in Le Mans. These brands benefited enormously. McQueen's image, tough, cool, and stylish, still sold products decades after his death. But not everyone was happy about it. His family, especially his children Chad and Terry, began questioning whether McQueen would have approved of how his name and face were being used. They also began asking where the money from these deals was going. The estate, at various points, had been managed by different companies, including Greenlight, a licensing group that handled publicity rights for dead celebrities. But accusations soon followed. The family claimed that some of the licensing deals were done without their full consent, or that profits weren't being shared fairly. There were disputes about who truly controlled McQueen's brand, the family who knew him, or the managers and agents who handled the paperwork. One lawsuit, filed in the 2000s, focused on merchandise and branding. The McQueen family argued that licensing agents were allowing products to be made with McQueen's name and face without proper approval or payment. Items like jackets, posters, model cars, and watches were being sold around the world, sometimes with very little connection to the actor's actual style or personal history. The family accused the estate managers of exploiting his legacy, treating him like a product rather than a person. Some fans agreed with the family, saying it felt like McQueen's image was being used too freely, turning his legacy into a marketing tool. Others saw it differently, believing that keeping his name in the public eye helped younger generations learn about his work and appreciate his films. Regardless of opinion, one thing is clear: Steve McQueen's name became a powerful brand. Today, more than 40 years after his death, the McQueen legacy is worth millions. Items connected to him, like motorcycles he once rode or watches he wore, are sold for huge sums at auctions. His movies are still popular, and his face is still used in ads and products. But behind that success, the legal and moral questions haven't gone away. If you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss more deep dives into the legends of Hollywood.